The first thing he noticed was not the noise of the street, nor the hurried footsteps of people passing by without looking down. It was the stare. A small puppy, trembling, ribs showing beneath dirty fur, staring at him with a look that felt far too aware for such a young creature. There was no bark, no whimper, only eyes fixed on him with quiet urgency, as if the puppy already knew this was the moment that could decide everything. He almost kept walking. Life had taught him to mind his own business, to ignore scenes like this because there were too many and he could not save them all. But the puppy did something unexpected. With a weak, uneven movement, it crawled closer and gently pressed its head against his shoe, as if begging without words. That simple gesture carried a weight that stopped him cold. It was not desperation alone. It was trust, offered by a creature that had every reason not to trust anyone. As he bent down, he realized something was terribly wrong. The puppy was thinner than it should have been, its breathing shallow, its body shaking from more than just the cold. When he touched it, he felt a faint pulse racing beneath fragile skin, and that was when the question hit him. What had this puppy been through to end up here, silently pleading instead of crying out? In that moment, helping was no longer a choice. It felt like a responsibility placed directly into his hands. He decided to follow the puppy when it struggled to stand and began limping away, stopping every few steps to look back and make sure he was still there. The path led behind abandoned buildings, away from the safety of crowds, towards something unseen. With every step, his heart grew heavier, sensing that this was not just about rescuing a lost animal, but about uncovering a truth that most people never notice because they walk past too quickly. What he found at the end of that short, painful journey would change the way he saw compassion forever. This was not just a story about a man and a puppy. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest beings carry the biggest messages, and that a single moment of attention can alter more than one life. And before this story is over, you will understand why that silent plea was never meant to be ignored. He followed the puppy past rusted fences and cracked pavement until the noise of the city faded into a hollow silence. The air felt heavier there, thick with neglect. The puppy stopped beside a collapsed cardboard box, its tail barely moving, and looked back at him again. In that look was urgency, not fear. It was as if the puppy was saying, "Please see this," because whatever waited nearby could not be faced alone. Behind a box, he noticed signs that told a painful story. A torn blanket soaked with rain, an empty plastic bowl, and paw prints pressed into dried mud. This was not a place where a puppy had wandered by accident. It was a place where something fragile had been left behind. The man felt a tightness in his chest, realizing this puppy had been surviving here for days, maybe longer, with no one stopping long enough to notice. As he knelt, the puppy leaned into his hand with a sigh so soft it almost sounded like relief. That simple touch revealed more than words ever could. Dogs do not pretend. When they trust, it is complete. And this puppy, despite hunger and weakness, chose trust anyway. In that instant, the man understood something powerful. Animals remember kindness, even when the world has shown them very little of it. He gently checked the puppy's body, careful not to cause pain. That was when he felt it, something unnatural beneath the fur, a stiffness that did not belong. His heart sank. This was not just a case of being lost or abandoned. This was an injury left untreated, growing worse with every passing hour. The puppy whimpered, not loudly, but enough to confirm the truth he had feared. The man looked around, searching for help, but the alley offered nothing except echoes. No people, no voices, just the puppy, shivering, depending on him completely. And in that quiet space, he made a decision that would set everything else in motion. He lifted the puppy carefully, feeling how light it was, and promised, out loud, that would not be alone anymore. The walk to his car felt longer than it truly was. Every step was filled with worry, every breath measured against the puppy's shallow breathing. He kept talking softly, even though he did not know if the puppy understood the words. What mattered was the tone. Dogs feel intention, and in his voice, there was a promise of safety the puppy had not felt in a long time. At the veterinary clinic, the bright lights revealed the full extent of the damage. Dirt masked wounds, and beneath that fragile body was a story of neglect written in bruises and scars. The veterinarian's face grew serious, as the examination continued. The puppy had been hurt, not recently, but long enough for the pain to become part of its daily existence. Yet even then, the puppy did not resist. It simply rested its head against the man's arm. As tests were done, the man waited, replaying the moment their eyes met on the street. He wondered how many people had walked past before him, how many chances the puppy had silently given the world. Stories like this are more common than people realize. Dogs endure quietly, holding on to hope long after logic says they should give up. That is not weakness. That is loyalty to life itself. The veterinarian finally spoke, explaining that the puppy could recover, but only because help came in time. A little later, and the outcome would have been very different. Those words echoed in the man's mind. Time. That fragile space between loss and salvation. The puppy had somehow known when to ask, and who to ask. It had chosen him, and that choice had made all the difference. As the puppy was wrapped in a clean blanket, its eyes slowly closed, exhaustion replacing fear. The man watched, feeling something shift inside him. This was no longer about rescuing a dog. It was about witnessing how resilience looks in its purest form. Small, quiet, and unbelievably strong. And as the puppy slept, safe for the first time in a long while, the man realized that this journey was only beginning. The following days blurred into a rhythm of quiet care. Feeding schedules, gentle medications, and long hours of watching the puppy sleep became part of the man's routine. Each small improvement felt monumental. A steadier breath, a slightly stronger attempt to stand. Tiny victories that meant everything when life had nearly slipped away. Through it all, the puppy never strayed far from him, as if afraid that safety might disappear if it stopped paying attention. Pain had left its mark in subtle ways. Sudden noises made the puppy flinch. Quick movements caused it to lower its head instinctively. These reactions spoke of experiences no animal should know, especially one so young. Yet even with fear still lingering, the puppy showed an astonishing desire to connect. It followed him from room to room, tail wagging faintly, eyes constantly searching his face for reassurance. One evening, as he sat on the floor beside the puppy's bed, something changed. The puppy slowly crawled into his lap, settling there with a deep, contented sigh. It was the first time it had truly relaxed. That simple act carried enormous meaning. Dogs do not surrender their guard easily once it has been broken. Trust, once lost, is rebuilt moment by moment. And in that quiet room, trust was being reborn. As days passed, the puppy began to play again, awkward and unsteady, but determined. It chased shadows on the wall and pounced on its own blanket, forgetting pain for brief moments. Those moments mattered. They were proof that joy can survive even after suffering. Watching this transformation, the man felt something unexpected grow within him, a sense of responsibility deeper than he had anticipated. He realized then that this puppy was not just healing physically. It was relearning what the world could be. That hands could comfort instead of hurt. That voices could soothe instead of scare. And in helping the puppy rediscover that truth, the man was confronting something within himself as well. The power of patience, and the quiet strength found in simply staying when it would be easier to walk away. One afternoon, while sitting near the window, the puppy noticed something outside and froze. Its ears perked up, body tense, eyes wide. A familiar fear flickered across its face. The man followed its gaze and saw nothing unusual, just a passerby walking a dog down the street. Yet for the puppy, this simple sight awakened memories it could not explain. He knelt beside it, placing a hand gently on its back, and waited. He did not rush. He did not force calm. He allowed the puppy to process the fear in its own time. Slowly, the tension eased. The puppy leaned into his touch, grounding itself in the present moment. This was healing in its truest form, not the absence of fear, but learning that fear no longer had control. Over time, the puppy began responding to its surroundings with curiosity instead of panic. New sounds became invitations instead of threats. New faces were met with caution, but not retreat. Each step forward was earned, not rushed. Emotional wounds, especially in dogs, close differently than physical ones. They require consistency, gentleness, and an unwavering sense of safety. The man often thought about how easily this story could have ended differently. One missed moment, one ignored glance. The puppy's life hinged on a single decision made on a crowded street. Stories like this reveal an uncomfortable truth. Compassion is rarely convenient, but it is always transformative, not just for the one who receives it, but for the one who chooses to give it. As the puppy rested at his feet that evening, stronger and more present than ever before, the man understood something profound. Rescue is not a single act. It is a series of choices made every day afterward. And with every choice, the bond between them deepened, quietly reshaping both lives in ways neither of them had anticipated. As the puppy grew stronger, its personality began to surface in gentle, surprising ways. It developed small habits, like circling twice before lying down or carrying a favorite toy from room to room as if guarding a treasure. These details might have seemed ordinary to anyone else, but to the man, they were signs of something extraordinary. They meant the puppy felt safe enough to be itself, no longer defined solely by survival. There were moments when the puppy would pause and simply watch him, head tilted slightly, eyes calm and attentive. In those moments, it felt as if the puppy was studying him, learning who he was just as carefully as he was learning who it could become. Dogs are remarkably perceptive. They sense emotions left unspoken, and the puppy seemed to understand that this human, too, carried quiet wounds of his own. During their walks, the puppy stayed close, occasionally brushing against his leg, as if checking that he was still there. The world outside was full of new smells and sounds, but the puppy no longer saw it as an enemy. Instead, it explored cautiously, confidence growing step by step. Each successful walk was another layer of fear peeled away, another reminder that healing is built through repetition and trust. The man noticed how the puppy reacted to kindness from others. A gentle voice, a slow movement, an offered hand. The puppy did not rush forward, but it did not retreat either. It observed, assessed, and decided. This was not weakness. It was wisdom shaped by experience. And in that careful balance, the man saw a reflection of resilience that went beyond instinct. It became clear that this puppy was teaching him something profound. Survival does not mean forgetting pain. It means learning how to move forward without letting pain decide the future. Watching the puppy grow into that understanding, the man felt a quiet admiration. This small life, once barely holding on, was now showing him what courage truly looked like. There came a moment, subtle but undeniable, when the man realized the puppy was no longer just recovering. It was thriving. Its steps were stronger, its eyes brighter, its tail quicker to wag. The shadow of its past had not vanished, but it no longer ruled its behavior. The puppy had reclaimed something essential, the ability to feel joy without fear, following close behind. One evening, as they sat together in silence, the puppy rested its head on his knee and looked up at him with complete calm. There was no urgency in that gaze now, no plea, just presence. That was when it struck him that the puppy no longer needed saving. It had found stability, safety, and something even more powerful, belonging. He reflected on how their lives had quietly intertwined. What began as an unexpected encounter on a crowded street had unfolded into something deeper and lasting. The puppy had entered his life at a moment when he himself felt disconnected, moving through days without truly noticing them. In caring for the puppy, he had slowed down, learned to pay attention again. Stories like this rarely announce their meaning loudly. They reveal it over time, through small moments of connection and quiet change. The puppy did not just survive hardship. It transformed it into awareness, patience, and trust. And in doing so, it altered the rhythm of the man's life in ways that could not be undone. As the puppy drifted into sleep beside him, breathing steady and unafraid, the man understood that some bonds are formed not through choice, but through timing. When two lives cross at exactly the right moment, they leave marks that last far beyond the beginning. And this story, though still unfolding, had already reshaped them both. In the end, this story was never only about a puppy who begged for help on a crowded street. It was about awareness, the kind that asks us to slow down and truly see what is placed in our path. A single moment of attention became a turning point, proving that compassion does not require grand gestures, only the courage to stop and care when it matters most. What this journey reveals is that healing is not instant, nor is it loud. It happens quietly, through patience, consistency, and the willingness to stay, even when the hardest part is already over. The puppy's recovery mirrored something deeply human. The truth that trust can be rebuilt, fear can loosen its grip, and even the smallest life can rise again when met with genuine kindness. This bond reminds us that rescue goes both ways. While the puppy found safety, the man rediscovered purpose, presence, and connection. In giving care, he received clarity. In choosing responsibility, he found meaning. Stories like this endure because they reflect a universal truth. When we help another being heal, we often heal parts of ourselves we did not realize were broken. So the next time the world feels rushed and indifferent, remember this moment. Remember that sometimes the most important call for help is silent, and the greatest changes begin with a simple choice to stop, look, and act. One decision can redirect an entire life, and sometimes more than one. If this story moved you, take a moment to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel to continue experiencing stories that remind us of empathy, resilience, and hope. Leave a like if you believe small acts of kindness still matter, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice, just like that quiet plea on the street, might be exactly what someone else needs to feel seen.